Hi, my name is Yana. I'm a modern Ajma. I am back on BookTube, baby. I am rushing to catch up to the current times. So with that, let's get straight to what I read in the month of March. I wanna be on time for like one of my favorite videos to make, which is the tag that I can never say correctly, the mid-year book checkup something. Anyway, I want to get that out. So if I want to get that out, I want to be able to talk about everything that I read previously. You know the drill. I also just chugged an iced coffee. Let's go. In March, because of the things that I read in February, I found myself wanting to read a lot more not thinky, more SNL. And I think this has a lot to do with the romantic comedy reread, but I wanted to read more books from stand-up comedians' memoirs. And I found Jim Gaffigan's Food, a Love Story, both as this physical copy as well as a library audiobook. TBH, I really was compelled to read this just for this cover alone. I'm vaguely familiar with Jim Gaffigan. I'm aware that he's like a clean comic. He has like a famous bread joke, apparently. So the vocal performance for the audiobook is excellent, as is to be expected for a stand-up comedian performer. I believe I was listening to this as I unintentionally burned a beautiful pot of short ribs, and I was angry eating ice cream afterwards. So like it was just perfect. Let's say I just needed to lighten up the mood, and this delivered that. This is literally all his thoughts on different foods. When I reference grits during a stand-up show, Southerners will clap like I mentioned the college they attended or that I support the troops. Yeah, I did find this to be funny, but after a while it did feel a little bit grating, just because I can only handle so much whining after a while, no matter how effervescent he may be in the delivery. And like his very American centered cynical opinions don't particularly age well. Like generally saying that he's not an expert on food, but he just knows what's good and what's not good. He just means that he likes hot dogs, he doesn't like fine dining. So I think you get the gist. This is very easy, very fast, surface level funny. I suppose there should be more poetry written about cheeseburgers. I read Modern Romance, an investigation by Aziz Ansari and Eric Kleinberg. I found this physical copy just because I saw the orange spine from Penguin Books at, was it Housing Works in Manhattan? When I went over the summer, I never read this book. I heard a lot about this book back when it came out in 2015. I've always meant to read it, never got around to it until now. I also accompanied this with a library audiobook read by the author, again, just as delightful as to be expected from a performer such as Aziz Ansari. I found it to be quite delightful. I highly recommend it. Like, I snort-lolled several times. However, I do think that this book was made for a very specific demographic of, and I do slightly fit this criteria, the heterosexuals of a certain age and income bracket who are more tech adept, which is like the new ASL. And really it's for the people who would know what that means, who have used that personally. And yes, I do find myself to be at the very center of this Venn diagram and am general a big Aziz Ansari fan. So I found this to be extremely fun. I love his show, Master of None. After reading this, I had to immediately rewatch from season 1. Gotta say, that show still hits the spot. I found this book to be very much for me, despite the fact that this is very much a dating investigation, and I have not been in the dating game for decades, which like predates all of the apps that are apparently, from what I hear, very prevalent in our current times. Nevertheless, this book still speaks very heavily to my generation's socio-anthropological blend of informative entertainment. You must be an Aziz Ansari humor fan to enjoy this book, because this book just oozes of it. And to be clear, this is not at all groundbreaking science. It's not science centered at all, nor does it mean to be. This is really just a product of a curious millennial man who is exploring his social era. And for that, I found it to be very charming, well-meaning, and very on brand. Like, I did appreciate the fact that this isn't like every other celebrity stand-up comic memoir that kind of just talks about their career, their personal history, like it's all about them and how they got to where they came to be. Not that that's anything bad or that's a wrong approach. I just really appreciated that he did something different, but it still feels very much like him. It still does come across like where he's coming from and how he's gotten here still comes across. Like, the man just loves pop social science. I kind of forgot about my whole like one-liner for the book. So if I were to sum this book up, it would be: dating, while tricky, thorny, and complex, is still compelling, exciting, fun, and arguably worthy to spend the majority of your adulthood on. Yeah, I recommend this. I liked it a lot. And upon my rewatch of season 1 of Master of None, which was back in 2015, first of all, I am a huge fan of season 2 of Master of None, purely because I absolutely fell in love with the Francesca character. I felt like she was the one. He should have dropped everything to be with her. Something about that actress and their chemistry worked so well. And the yearning, oh my god, the yearning. And I rewatch season 2 all the time. I have to watch the Thanksgiving episode every Thanksgiving season. Chef's kiss, amazing. So I tend to forget Master of None season 1, and lately my husband has been threatening me to move us out of Southern California to New York City. I say threaten facetiously, obviously. I would love to live in New York City, but I'm very happy here as a fat cat in my nice Southern Orange County house. I don't really feel like arguing with my building on why there's no hot water in the middle of winter. That's just me. But you know, reality, the fantasy of season 1 Master of None. Oh, I forgot just how fresh that show was, how well written all of the characters were, how alive they felt, like the best versions of people. And the very optimistic Obama era really came through. I know that Master of None is also guilty of the same criticisms of a show such as Sex and the City, where the characters are just pursuing frivolous things and seemingly in possession of unlimited amounts of money. But yeah, it's just such a wonderfully well-written, earnestly made depiction of modern life, modern romantic life, which this book is also a very nice example of. So I then continued to read Ayoade on Top by Richard Ayoade. And I want to say, I read this purely because I watched that Graham Norton clip of him talking about this book when he was promoting it, and I never heard of it before. And like I recently watched this Graham Norton clip, and this book came out in 2019, so it's been a while. I'll put the link for the clip below. And also, I believe that I stumbled upon this clip because of Ben, my love, Ben, who has been literally the light of my life every time he posts one of his incredible lip syncing like TikToks, reels that have been blowing up. I'm so happy for him. And all of the pop culture moments that he lip syncs to, for the most part, for the vast majority, I've never seen them before until watching his videos, and a lot of them are Graham Norton interviews. I'm not British. I wish I was, but The real Brits continuously remind me that I'm not actually British. Oh, and of course, I do miss Ben's wonderful booktube channels of yore. Gone are the days, except for mine, I guess, of when booktubers did monthly wrap ups that were like 45 minutes long. Oh my god, I would listen to his videos on repeat. Sometimes just to have on in the background, sometimes just fall asleep to. His voice is amazing. It's really a shame that he does these lip syncs where you're not actually hearing his real voice. Anyway, I'll stop gushing about Ben now. Richard Ayoade. As I said, I'm not British. Wish I was. I find him to be such a singular British performer. I read his memoir, Ayoade on Top, via audiobook read by the author, which is an absolute must. His voice is certainly unique. This was a very breezy 4 hours, not as long as Anna Karenina or Madame Bovary XL, hashtag in your face Tolstoy. John Milton's Fall of Man dramedy, Paradise Lost. Just very dry humor, as you can see, but like the title suggests, it is a roast of the Gwyneth Paltrow film View from the Top. Yeah, again, I was listening to this, I think as I was just doing housework and other menial tasks that I breezily listened to, and just his performance on the Graham Norton show was strong enough for me to read his book, so I did. I'm a fan of Ayoade. I watched the IT Crowd with my husband. Love that show. He has a travel show, The Travel Man, I think. Also a big fan. Yeah, if you know any more Richard Ayoade stuff that I should be hip to, know about, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know. Oh, and I also read the book that no one wanted to read by Richard Ayoade. Turns out he also wrote a children's book that I read an ebook. This was like a random last minute choice to read during my kids' reading hour. And I just wanted something to laugh with, to take my mind off of irritable things. But I found this to be really delightful. I keep using that word. But for a children's book, he doesn't dumb down anything, which is always something to appreciate. He doesn't change his voice at all. He stays who he is, just packaged more for a kid's audience. Yeah, this was wonderful. It's a children's book about books and what's involved in reading books, and like the plot, characters, the physical aspect of the book itself. It had a lot of whimsical illustrations by Tor Freeman. Yeah, whether you have a kid or not, if you're a Richard Ayoade fan, worth a look. The Labors of Hercules by Agatha Christie. I also own a physical copy of, because I just want a physical collection of every Agatha Christie. But I read this as an audiobook read by, I believe it was Hugh Fraser. Love Hugh Fraser's voice. I could listen to him read the phone book. However, this is an early Agatha Christie. It came out in 1947. Therefore, it has some imbecilic lines like American character / caricature saying lines like, "Stick 'em up, guys, I'm pretty good at shooting." Who also constantly mispronounces Poirot's name as Poirier. There's a beautiful woman character born to high privilege. There's a Weasley blackmailing newspaper editor hounding her. There's a cocaine story from the 1940s. This is one of those short story formats that all narratively combine as a novel. And there's also a very loose context of the Greek myth of Hercules, the labor of Hercules, and so Poirot's solving all of these problems one by one. Agatha Christie has a Jane Marple equivalent. I love Miss Marple. That one is like a dinner party theme. I much prefer that book to this one. However, I always appreciate when Dame Christie plays with her form, and even though this was just fine, kind of finger waggy, of course racist at times, and it is hard to justify my stan. Nevertheless, I love the playfulness this book has, and I just gotta love a woman in the 20th century getting that business. Yeah, she's so crafty. So, not that the labor of Hercules really counts, but After reading Divine Might by Natalie Haynes back in February, I was so drawn back into the world of contemporary Greek retellings. I've heard things about Stone Blind, neither positive nor negative, but nevertheless, I love Natalie Haynes so much that I wanted to continue with like her big one. I believe this is like her most famous novel. It started with the audiobook read by the author, but I ran out to buy my own paper copy at Barnes and Nobles to be able to highlight lines. It has been, let me tell you, other than Toni Morrison, it has been a long time since I wanted to do that. Like, I used to feel very free to highlight and mark up my books, but then I've been working at my library store and just knowing more about how the system works, and also like the as I've stated earlier, the threat of being forced to move across the country. How can I move with all of that? That's not going to happen. So basically, I think from here on out, I might have to just live assuming that I could have to drop everything and leave last minute. So all of that is to say, all of that is a testament to how good I felt Stone Blind to be. As always with every Natalie Haynes, spoiler, I read more Natalie Haynes in the next few months. I'm gonna always recommend a Natalie Haynes audiobook if it's read by herself. The emotional scenes in Stone Blind resonate so much harder by the emotional depth in her voice, and it feels so powerful. All the humorous scenes are conveyed by the delight and lightness in her voice, such as when she's talking about the pettiness of the gods. So as you can tell from the cover, Stone Blind is a contemporary feminist retelling of the tale of Medusa, co-starring the Olympian gods, Perseus, all with a very hefty dose of how dare he tone. It was just so enjoyable. Do I like Haynes more than Madeline Miller? I feel like they're different. I feel like they both bring a different vibe. Like, they have their own styles. I must say that I didn't cry as hard as I did when I was reading Circe, but that doesn't take away anything from Stone Blind, from Natalie Haynes. There's a lot to love. My God, all of these books that I'm like really enjoying, I'm having fewer things to say about them than I do for the books that I find very mid or even bad. Do you do that too? Oh my God, I feel kind of bad. But how many different ways are there to say, I love this? Mythos, the Greek Myths Reimagined by Stephen Fry. I have had this book. I actually have all three. Are there three of these books by Stephen Fry? I've been meaning to read them for years. Honestly, I love this book as an object more than I like the contents. I also read this as an audiobook read by the author. Bombastic vocal performance, shall we say? Is it famously so? Again, I'm not British. But yeah, the physical book is beautiful. Look at the quality of the color representations of the classical paintings that Greek myths are famously influential for, that correspond to the tales that Fry writes. The orderly layout makes it very easy to read, and loads of footnotes. The paper is lovely and thick. Like, the serif font is lovely. This teal and bronze cover is lovely. But yeah, I'm just ruined by all of these feminist retellings because this ain't it. And Madeline Miller, Natalie Haynes, they just do it so much better because it speaks of their own experiences. They identify with common motifs in severe patriarchy by practice, if not by name. Ask yourself, how could a white man write the stories of Toni Morrison? You can't. So Fry's version of Greek mythical retellings, while they are very cheeky, very playful, they are very much coming from a male POV and very much on his side, the side of the male god, male demigod, male hero. So at best, he comes across as like a beta male siding with the underdog, like ugly Hephaestus over handsome Ares. And at worst, just not believing all the rape, not calling it rape, and placing that consent on the women who were taken by Zeus. And also there was a very big childish element coming from the voice. There's also like a heavy etymology focus to show like the lasting influence and impact it has on contemporary thinking. Even though I have the other two, I don't think I want to continue. But they are beautiful. Chronicle books, good on you. Fire and Blood by George R. R. Martin. I believe I started this back in 2018 when it came out, and I bought this as soon as it came out, and I started reading this. I was a huge Game of Thrones fan, both book and series. Huge House of the Dragon fan. Extremely looking forward to season 2. So I started reading this when it came out, and I bought this book, but it wasn't really resonating. So I just put it down and haven't picked it back up since until now, because I just really want to know what happens in season 2. This is another book with a lot of illustrations by Doug Wheatley. But I also read this mostly as an audiobook, which was read by Simon Vance, who gives a very boomery, straight delivery. Like, I can hear his arm swinging triumphantly. So, you know, we all know this is going to be high fantasy tales where oligarchs ruled and regularly practiced incest because bros just found their sisters to be too damn hot. There's a savage origin story of the Kingsguard. I mean, all of the stories are savage. So many appendages sliced off. As if IRL medieval history isn't cruel and heinous enough. And after all of my feminist POV Greek retellings, this felt like such a whiplash. Maidenheads this, weddings that. Firmly in the male POV. But I knew that. That's a given. We all know this. And then this also reminded me that I was in the middle of my Lord of the Rings read. I read Fellowship and Two Towers, and I still need to read Return of the King. But it just reminded me, like, while George R. R. Martin is similar in scope, he lacks Tolkien's heart. Yeah, just so much male anxiety over unwed vages, yet unclaimed. And then once they're wed, how often they were consummated. Like, did Lady Featherington in season 3 of Bridgerton read this book? Very sex obsessed. But you know, all of this is kind of unfair because this isn't really a novel at all. It's more a chronological historic account of who banged who. Like, I feel like as a fan, we're supposed to go, oh, so that's how the King's Road or Mailer's Holdfast or the Gold Cloaks, all those things were started. But no, he's just horny. And it's very not hot. It's also pretty sickening how pedo this gets. And so it's just truly amazing. I mean, I say this now, maybe I might change my mind in like a few years, but it's truly amazing how House of the Dragon took this energy and made it into what IMHO, a very feminist, beautiful show that show women to be powerful, confident, sexy leaders. Why do I think it's so hot that she wants to fuck her uncle? So I read, other than reading the Song of Fire and Ice series, I also read A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which I remember liking a lot. But this, I literally don't rec this to anybody. Even for fans who just want to know, like, how the story ends, who want to know about the Targaryen history. Avoid this. Keep your fan spirit alive. Empire of Pain, The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty by Patrick Radden Keefe. I finally felt ready to take on the last Patrick Radden Keefe I have left. I knew that this, first of all, what an impressive cover. I knew that this would be a heavy read. I know how much everyone praises this book. I have no hot takes, no OG thoughts. I found this to be incredible. Just an incredible piece of journalism in a book. Like, a phenomenally gossipy tale of a family who sells OxyContin to us now and in previous generations sold Valium. I kept thinking of Mad Men, but for pharma. Like, equally juicy, scintillating human entanglement. While I always think of everything in terms of marketing, I actually never think of pharma. Think of pharma marketing, medical marketing. And of course, it is so simple. The lines directly match across to target people of a certain class and culture with certain drugs. Villain behavior can truly be so simple, so natural. Like, what more obfuscates the gleam of just doing your job? And then there are some colorful side characters, like a desperate Met Museum director, perhaps the world's most supportive ex-wife, even mentions of random actors like Jeffrey Wright and Mark Rylance being responsible human beings. So many stories proving that it is always how well you can work a body. This detail-packed succession in an investigative journalism nonfiction book is worth the hype. Though FYI, the succession-y parts don't hit until like at least 75% of the way into the book. What's most notable, as in Empire of Pain, as in Succession, despite any semblance of good intentions from the original generation to pass on their inheritance, the younger generation's always gonna fuck it up. Genius does not always pass down. It's just unsustainable. Having said all this, I think I prefer, of the three Patrick Radden Keefes that I've read, Say Nothing. Even Rogues, like Rogues is super fun, and Say Nothing has, I don't know, more heart on PRK's part. Like, I felt the raw pain on the pages. Not to say that this is a skip. Still incredible 5-star read. Very important to know about, if only to identify patterns of villain behavior. And lastly, not leastly, this might be this might be my most favorite. Grief is for People by Sloane Crosley. I got this as a Barnes & Noble pre-order. Read it immediately. I wish the cover was better. It's way too plain. I'm not thrilled about these colors. However, the content, incredible. This is an elegy for her dearly departed friend about the miracle of people and the human experience in all its goods and bads, dwelling on loss, glimpses of New York City publishing PR work life, which I found to be one of the most fascinating aspects of this book. But overall, I just find Sloane Crosley to be an incredibly articulate writer. Like, at an unreachable level for my incoherent self with my head and mouth full of rocks. I've been a fan ever since her first collection of essays came out. I was told there'd be cake, purely for that title, for that amazing cover. Spoiler, I have recently reread it again in May. And so it was just so interesting to see where she is now compared to where she started from, how she's evolved, and just further insight to where she's coming from. Like, the kind of very privileged, non-traditional kind of work that she has is just so different from what I personally know. Of course, I find that fascinating. And while I'd also go, it's just jewelry, I'll never see it again, live and let go, and I would never do what she does to try to get them back, I really enjoyed this approach to talking about her approach to grief and losing what's important and irreplaceable to her. And her choices tell me that this is probably why I'm not at her level and why she is where she is and why I am where I am. I do not have an incendiary literary voice with the tenacity and creativity to hunt down eBay sellers. I also went into this with the expectation and anticipation that this is Crosley's version of Melissa Broder's Death Valley. Like, both of these to be like their lockdown baby book, like their thoughts on loss. And unfortunately, because I love Melissa Broder, I found that this works so much better than Broder's attempt with Death Valley. Like, both have the message that grief is for people, but this book literally says it. And its articulation of it is so dexterous. And for someone who comes across as extremely highbrow and smug, it still feels very raw, very open. I like this very much. The information was never the point, so much as his delight in sharing it. That was everything that I read in March. It didn't feel like a lot. I felt like there was a lot else happening, including, I hope you all caught the live that I took part in with the Disco Kings, like booktube trivia night. That was a lot of fun. Oh my god, I was rushing. Like, I had so much packed that weekend. It was Easter weekend, but I was just so happy to be included. I will, of course, link that in the description box below. That was a lot of fun. Play along if you haven't seen it yet. I very much went into that with a wrong answers only energy. And I guess you can call this like very big mood reading month, since I did not intend to read any of these this month except for the new release of the Sloane Crosley. But I'm really enjoying how my reading year has been evolving and shaping out to be just what it wants to be. And I'm finding a lot of books that I would have otherwise not read, but I am curious to explore these certain worlds of stand-up comedy, of contemporary Greek retellings, of nonfiction investigative journalism. Thank you for watching. I will be back very soon with April, and then I'll be caught up to May, and then we can do the, what is it called? Mid-year book tag? Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.